I went for like shopping.
Gotcha. Thank you. Ready? Yeah. Stand for.
Okay, if we could have your attention, please. First thing we're going to do is let's all stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I want to say thank you to, and can you all hear me?
Yeah.
I've been told I talk softly. Thank you to everyone that has come. If there is anybody who wishes to speak in the public comments and witnesses, please come and sign the paper here. I want to say, first of all, the purpose of this meeting is to address IC Code 314.321.5, which says a person who knowingly or intentionally intimidates, threatens, or coerces an individual for voting or attempting to vote, urging or aiding another individual to vote or attempt to vote, or exercising any power of duty under this title concerning registration or voting, commits voter intimidation, a level 6 felony. So our whole purpose here this morning is to address the complaint of James Bradley DeHart and Sherry Flynn. All other matters regarding laws, IC codes, or interpretations of codes will be dealt with at a later date. We are not here to discuss IC codes and their interpretations. So the only items we will be addressing this morning is related to the aforementioned IC code. And when we have public comments, they will be limited to 3 minutes per person. Okay? Because all of us want to get home for lunch, right? Oh, it's so sweet to see smiles out there. Okay, first of all, we're going to have Rachel to read the complaint by Mr. DeHart.
Sorry. To the Perry County Election Board, please allow this correspondence to serve as my official notice to file a complaint against a poll and/or / election worker, Sherry Flynn, specific to her actions of which I believe constitute voter intimidation under IC Code 314.321.5. I further believe that Ms. Flynn violated my rights under the Indiana Voters Bill of Rights specific to the section that pertains to primary elections. In addition to the aforementioned violations I have cited, I feel that Ms. Flynn targeted and discriminated against me personally at my polling location due to not only my sexual orientation, but my relationship with a high-profile elected official who is of the opposite party of her. Ms. Flynn aggressively initiated a challenge affidavit upon my attempt to vote in the primary election. However, Ms. Flynn did not state or otherwise provide factual evidence to support her reasoning for issuing this challenge when she demanded that I complete and sign the form. Due to the intimidation, aggression, and disruption that resulted from Ms. Flynn's hostile efforts to challenge my vote, the police were contacted and a 911 CAD report was completed. Witnesses of the events that transpired include Mary Hackle, Tootie Parker, and 2 other gentlemen who were there as poll or election workers, of which I never learned their names. My partner, Chris Kale, was also present and witnessed Ms. Flynn's actions. In addition, multiple voters were present for partial moments of the event. The entirety of the events described in detail below took place on May 7th, 2024 at approximately 9 a.m. Central Standard Time at the Tell City Depot, located at 333 7th Street, Tell City, Indiana. At approximately 9 a.m., my partner Chris Kale and I went to our designated polling location to vote in the primary election. Upon walking into the building, Chris and I walked up to the table where the election workers were seated. Chris checked in first, and then I proceeded to check in with a gentleman who was very nice to me. He asked to see my ID, confirmed my address and name, and then turned a tablet screen to face me to select Democrat or Republican for the primary I wanted to vote in. I selected a Republican ballot for several local reasons and for the state races that I had interest in as well. Once I made my selection, a ticket was automatically printed and handed to me. Unknowingly, a poll worker, Sherry Flynn, was standing directly behind me, not more than 3 or 4 feet. She asked for my ticket without explaining why she needed it, and then went about 20 to 30 feet across the room to a table where poll judge or supervisor, I assume, was seated. I watched her pull out a 2-sided form and began writing on it. For several minutes, I stood in the middle of the room waiting while no one offered any information or explanation. It wasn't until I asked what was going on that she turned back and responded by stating, "I'm filing a challenge against your vote." When she stated this, I was confused as I did not know what that meant, and both my partner Chris and I asked at the same time why my vote was being challenged. Ms. Flynn proceeded to approach me, walking toward me in an aggressive manner with a challenge form in hand. She was flipping the form front to back in my face to seemingly show me, and then pointed to where I needed to sign the back of it. Ms. Flynn was not clear in the minimal information she provided about the form or the reason for it. I stated to Ms. Flynn that I did not understand the information or the form, in which she proceeded to tell me that I could not vote unless I signed that form. I told Ms. Flynn I was not going to sign the form because I did not understand it, and I specifically told her that I did not feel safe in her presence due to her intimidating, aggressive demeanor and hostility she was expressing toward me. Ms. Flynn aggressively verbalized very loudly that she was challenging my vote due to me not being a member of the Republican Party. She proceeded to state in everyone in the room that if I cast a vote without signing the form, then it was considered election fraud, and then stated that if my vote was counted, the entire election would have to be redone. Ms. Flynn proceeded to loudly and aggressively state for everyone in the room to hear that I was not a member of the Republican Party. My partner Chris had asked the supervisor if it would be possible to cast a provisional ballot. Before the supervisor could answer, Ms. Flynn interjected, holding up the challenge form, and stated that at the top it clearly reads that a provisional ballot cannot be cast. The supervising judge, I assume, of the polling location, who was wearing a blue polo shirt, and Ms. Flynn exchanged words, while I still stood there waiting for an answer of any kind. My partner Chris was standing at the entrance of the building, waiting to learn what we needed to do. Both Ms. Flynn and a supervisor gentleman, I'm not sure of his name, were both exchanging words while using their cell phones to seemingly call and or text someone that could clarify the situation. After approximately 7 or 8 additional minutes passed, the reference supervisor, who had made a phone call, stated that he had spoken with the county election board and that I would be able to vote and proceed toward the voting booth. I verbally confirmed with the supervisor and all of the present election workers that it was okay for me to proceed to vote without signing any documents. All election workers who were present verbally agreed that it was allowed. As I proceeded to cast my vote, Ms. Flynn was loudly claiming election fraud and misconduct in the presence of other voters and election workers, and continued to verbalize her reasoning why I should not be voting, loudly enough for everyone to hear. Ms. Flynn further targeted my partner, who was waiting at the door entrance of the building due to his concern for my safety as a result of Ms. Flynn's unpredictable and intimidating behavior toward me. Ms. Flynn proceeded to tell my partner that he could not remain in the building, at which time I told Ms. Flynn that I wanted him to remain, as I did not feel safe in her presence without him as a witness. The other election workers allowed Chris to remain due to the volatile events occurring, and Ms. Flynn loudly yelled, "If he," referencing my partner Chris, "is allowed to stay after voting, then I am going to have my husband stay here all day long when he comes to vote later." My partner Chris did exit the room. At that time, I was able to begin casting my vote. Ms. Flynn caused such a disturbance and distraction as I was casting my votes. I paused from voting to turn around and tell her to be quiet while I am voting, because she literally created an intimidating environment where I could not concentrate on what I was doing or the people I was voting for. Ms. Flynn continued to cause a verbal disturbance until the election worker wearing the blue polo shirt intervened in her attempt to interrupt voting, at which time Ms. Flynn left the room. Chris Kale and I left the building and returned to our vehicle after completing the voting process, and immediately contacted the Perry County Clerk's office to inform them of the situation, of which they were already made aware of by the supervising election worker. We were informed that I did not have to return to sign the form after it was determined that Ms. Flynn was not authorized to challenge my vote based on the fact that she resides in precinct 2 and I reside in precinct 1, and the challenger must reside in the same precinct to initiate the challenge per the Perry County Election Board. At the same time of learning that I was not required to sign the form, I had also been informed that due to disturbance and interference that Ms. Flynn caused at the precinct, the county clerk had contacted the police dispatch to send an officer to the location for a disturbance call and verbal altercation. I have provided a copy of that 911 CAD report that documents that Ms. Flynn was attempting to interfere with me and was hostile and intimidating throughout the process. I am in disbelief of the events that took place and feel personally victimized by the actions of Ms. Flynn. I was publicly embarrassed, harassed, and intimidated while trying to exercise my vote in an Indiana primary election. I am a transplant resident from Kentucky, where I was born and raised, and have only ever participated in one other Indiana election, which was last year for the city of Tell City in the general election. The more disturbing aspect of today is that I have learned that as of this email, there have been 0 challenge votes for this primary, aside from the attempted challenge placed on my vote, which further indicates targeting and discriminatory practices due to my sexual orientation, along with my affiliation and relationship with a high-profile Democratic elected official. To further support my claims of election interference and voter intimidation inflicted by Sherry Flynn, please see the screenshot in this document where Ms. Flynn can be seen commenting on a post stating, "Because even when Democrats infiltrated our primary, we still win. Thank you for voting." Her comment was made on another person's page in reference to a post made by another individual congratulating Randy Cole for winning, and only further provides evidence that Ms. Flynn was not an objective poll or election worker who supports or believes in the integrity of the election or voting process, clearly identified by her words when the Democrats infiltrated our primary. As a local governing authority of elections and the process involved, I respectfully request all members of the Perry County Election Board to review my report, investigate the details I have provided, and take significant action to reprimand Ms. Flynn to the fullest extent of your powers, if you agree that your investigation concurs with my report. If you concur with my report, I further ask for this board to take immediate action to place a permanent ban on Ms. Flynn from ever participating in or having any working capacity in regard to Perry County elections governed by this board. I further respectfully request that this board, at your discretion and authority, alert and notify all state and federal election boards and commissions as deemed appropriate by your board of this incident, including the Indiana Secretary of State's office, along with the United States Department of Justice and Voter Rights, the Civil Rights Division, and report and provide them with this report and any and all details they may request, as I intend to do as well. Throughout the duration of my residency in Perry County, I have never questioned my love or passion for this community until May 7th, 2024. I have never felt intimidated or unsafe in a community building the way I felt unsafe on May 7th at the Telsey Depot. Ms. Flynn targeted only me for very obvious personal reasons and her assumption that she knew my intent to vote in the Republican primary. My intent has never and would never be to infiltrate an election, as Ms. Flynn referenced. My intent on May 7th was to cast a vote in a primary where I supported multiple candidates from the Republican Party. Ms. Flynn further failed to inquire about my personal involvement and history with the Republican Party because she was seemingly distracted by labeling me and intimidating me during the process of trying to vote. What Ms. Flynn remains unaware of to this day, due to her own overcrowding prejudices, is that I have not only personally supported many Republican candidates, locally, statewide, and beyond, in addition to Democrats, I have further personally provided financial contributions to all parties as well at the local level, and further assisted multiple candidates, Republican and Democrats, in their campaigns in Kentucky. Ms. Flynn made and used a very ill-informed and prejudiced assumption against me on May 7th, 2024, and used voter intimidation tactics to hinder my constitutional right to vote as an American. It is my sincere hope that the Perry County Election Board, the Secretary of State, and the United States Department of Justice understand the severity of this incident and the precedents it will set, along with ramifications it will have if not addressed to the fullest extent. Thank you for your time.
That is the formal complaint that has been made regarding the incident with Sherry Flynn. Is Sherry here to speak is it? Okay. I would like to call Greg Applegate. Are you here? If you would please come. What we would like is we would just like for you to tell us what you saw, what you heard, what the incident was that day from your perspective, if you would please. You can step, where's that podium at?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, you should be able to hear.
You should be able to hear.
Pretty much what the statement stated, Brad and Chris both checked in, and next thing I know, Sherry was challenging his right to vote, and she became quite agitated at him, and the clerks didn't really understand what was going on because it just like blew up in a second, and next thing we know, here comes the cops, and we were just like standing there with our mouths open. But evidently it was between the two of them and our judge. And pretty much it goes just about the way that he said it.
So you concur with Mr. DeHart's statement? Okay. Okay, thank you very much. All right. Ben Inman, the inspector there, if you could please make a statement, give us your words, what happened that day.
Most everything in his statement seems to be accurate.
Please speak up.
Now that I walk up here, I forgot. There was two things that I did not quite agree with. I think, in my perspective, from what I've seen, they both appeared to be very civil up until the time that the mayor objected. That was just my recollection from where I'm standing. The other thing is the explaining of the fact that the clerks were not supposed to hand the individuals the ticket that was supposed to be handed directly to the judge was our instructions.
Okay.
So it was never explained to him that was not supposed to happen.
Okay.
Those are the only two things I can think of that I disagreed with out of his statement. Everything else seemed to be right.
All right, so it was that they were civil until, what did the mayor speak? Do you know?
I do not remember. I just know it was, his words were a little heated. He did them, when he found out his partner can't vote, he did calm down instantly.
All right. Okay. All right, thank you very much. All righty. Okay. We have a statement, Mary Hackle. She cannot be here, but she did write a statement, and Mary Kay will read that.
During the primary election on May 7th, 2024 at the Tell City Depot Precinct 1, 2, and 3, Bradley DeHart came in to vote in precinct number 1. Bradley DeHart requested a Republican ballot and was then challenged by Republican Judge Sherry Flynn. She said he had to sign form saying he was selecting a Republican ballot. DeHart did not understand what was going on and refused to sign the form. Sherry made a statement to Bradley that if he failed to sign the form, all votes would be canceled that day. This went on for 30 to 45 minutes. Finally, Ben, the Republican inspector, told me to go ahead and let Bradley vote. Sherry then asked me who let Bradley vote, and I told her Ben. At the point, Sherry told me if Bradley voted, she was calling Channel 14 News and an attorney. And Mary has signed this, Mary Hackle. She was Democrat judge.
Okay. Marcia or Marcia Parker. Are you here? Would you please make a statement? She was the Democratic poll clerk.
Come down here.
If you want to step down.
Get your-
You can,
I'll just
you can lean on the podium.
Well, it was quite eventful. I'll have to say that when Bradley came in, they did the normal, signed in, got their ticket. Sherry right away challenged it, and she got very loud about it. And in his face, she said that he could not vote unless he signed his paper, and he didn't understand why he couldn't vote, nor did I at that point. She just kept it up. She said, you're not gonna vote, you can't do this, it just went on and on and on. And Bradley said very little except that I'm not signing the paper. Well, then she said something to Mr. Kale, and she told Mr. Kale he needed to leave, and Mr. Kale said, I'm not leaving. And under those circumstances, I would have felt the same way. I would not want my husband to leave if I was under that stressful situation. He wasn't saying anything. He was just standing there listening. When she found out that he was going to vote, she said, I'll call Channel 14 and I'll call the lawyers because I know what I'm talking about. And we'll see who gets this done. And from time to time, she would leave the room and go back. I don't know if she was using her phone or not, but she was out of sight, And it just didn't end until after the police came, and after they got the call from the courthouse that said that Mr. DeHart could vote. Then they did allow him to vote, and she was, like I say, she was very, very aggressive to him, in his face aggressive, And in the interim, voters were coming in, and trying to vote, and so I think under the circumstances, Mr. DeHart handled it very well considering the way he was treated. And she never fully explained, as far as I could hear, why he couldn't vote. She just wanted him to sign that paper, and she was determined he was going to sign it. And she had it. I mean, she just went over to the desk and picked it up, right away, and she was going to have him sign. So I don't know. The poll watcher come in and sat there through some of it. I think the biggest part of it was over. But the poll watcher stayed there for a long time and talked to Mr. Flynn, Mrs. Flynn, and the inspector, and different ones. But she was very aggressive and very unprofessional under the circumstances, I thought.
One quick question. You said she went to the table and picked up the form. Did she get that form from the inspector?
I did not see her get that form.
Okay.
And I do know at the end of the day, when we were closing, she had some forms laying there, and I don't know what they were.
Okay.
But she said, I'm taking these forms with me.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much. I'm sorry.
Thank you.
Okay. All right. The only other person we've had here to sign is Dale Poole. If you could please come forward. This is the time public comments.
I was not present at the poll or witnessed any of this that went on. I'd just like to point out that in the past, people have voted in opposite primaries. It's sometimes people just want to have a friend or something. They want to switch over to the other party's primary ballot and vote for. And I don't know what the laws are or the rules, but I do want to point out that Sherry Flynn should have known that what Bradley was, Mr. DeHart was doing was legal. She apparently said the Democrats were trying to infiltrate the Republican Party and vote on their ticket. According to public records which were obtained from the clerk's office, in 2006, 2010, 2014, 2018, and 2019, Sherry Flynn herself voted a Democrat ballot in primaries. So, in my opinion, and this is just my opinion, it's pretty much a display of hypocrisy to try to stop someone from voting the ballot that they're legally allowed to vote. That's all I've got to say.
Are there any other public comments? Okay. Discussion and decision on the complaint. Okay, Rachel, do you have any thoughts? Or a decision on this complaint?
Okay, so here's what I suggest. Looking at the voter intimidation law, page 613 in your IC code book. I will read that. So it's IC code 3-14-3-21.5, voter intimidation. A person who knowingly or intentionally intimidates, threatens, or coerces an individual for 1, voting or attempting to vote, 2, urging or aiding another individual to vote or attempt to vote, or 3, exercising any power or duty under this title concerning registration or voting, commits voter intimidation, a level 6 felony. So what I think we need to look at is the definitions of intimidate, threaten, or coerces. And we'll discuss that then.
Yeah, I'm a person, I like to know what words mean.
Same.
That helps me understand. Knowingly, that means to have knowledge or to be aware of. Intentional is on purpose. To intimidate someone, you are to frighten or overawe them, especially in order to make them do what you want. If you threaten someone, that states one's intention to take hostile action against someone in retribution for something done or not done. And to coerce would be to persuade an unwilling person to do something by using force or threats. To compel by force, intimidation, or authority, especially without regard for the individual desire or volition. So what we are trying to determine here is, in the situation in response to the complaint, was Sherry aware of the fact, or did she knowingly or intentionally address Mr. James Bradley DeHart? Was he targeted or was he picked specifically? This is what we need to determine. In just now reading this and hearing this morning, that she had said, and we had several witnesses state that she was going to call the news, call lawyers and all, for this threaten. It says it states one's intention to take hostile action against someone. That could intimidate a lot of people. It really could. It sounds pretty much like there was a threat there, but it still comes back to, was it intentional? Did she know? So I'll let Mary Kay state her findings, her feelings, and then we'll.
Well, when we walked into the depot, she was very hostile, hollering at me, and I told her there was no reason for this. It was stupid, and she said I called her stupid. I did not call her stupid. What I said was what she was doing was stupid, and I agree. She was very hostile. She was not doing her job. She was getting She was the judge in that poll. And not one time that we were there did she take a voter to the machine. She was too busy stirring trouble. And she knew they planted her in that precinct to do what she did. And Bradley was targeted. There's no doubt in my mind.
I wish immensely that Sherry was here because I would love to hear her tell me her side of what happened. There was from indications and from testimonies this morning, it's to my understanding that no one else was challenged. That kind of puts it in a different light. So it makes it look as though that he may have been targeted for his vote. I will say this, that her actions that she stated that while we were there was that he was Democratic pulling a Republican ticket. Looking back, he had no voter history because he had not yet voted in any primary in Indiana, so there was no indication which party he was. So there was an assumption made there that he was Democratic. We have many, many families in this county that one member may be a Republican and one may be a Democrat. There are many in this county that way. So it appears that there was a targeting there. And the one thing I will say, there's one statement in Mr. DeHart's complaint here that I do not agree with, that he stated he thought it might have been due to sexual orientation. Nothing in the testimonies, the words, or anything has indicated that. The testimonies have all indicated it was strictly political. And whether Mr. DeHart, and if it was not him, if it was because he was related to the mayor, it could have been a mayor's mother, father, brother, sister. It could have been any relationship to the mayor because it's well known that the mayor is a strong of the Democratic Party. So I feel like the targeting was political, not because of any orientation. But I do have to agree, and I, like I said, I wish she was here. I wish she had brought some witnesses so we could hear what her thinking, what her understanding was. But since she is not here, we can only base a judgment on the facts that are presented here. So I will ask, what do you think? Do you think it was intentional?
Intentional, yes, because like you said, no one else was challenged. I feel he was an easy target because of, with running, someone had mentioned something about you running the campaign for Betty. Doesn't matter. I had a Republican running my campaign for me whenever I ran. So intentional, yes, I do agree. Let's see. And I can say that because I was told that they brought their own paperwork, which I provided all that paperwork in the totes, and you guys did verify that that was in there. So that there was no need to bring that paperwork to any polling location. So it's, to me, I feel they were looking to challenge people that day. But why just him?
Mary Kay, do you feel that?
Yes, I do. I think it was intentional, and he was targeted. There's no doubt that when she brought her own paperwork and was over at the table, that's what she was there for, because she did not do any of her job. Her job was to get the tickets from the clerk and take them to the voting booth to vote. And not one time when we was there did she do that. And my question is also how Randy Cole, outside of the precinct, how he knew all this had happened inside the poll. Whenever we got down there and got out of the car, here he come. He had already called Indiana something or another, and I didn't even listen to him. I just went.
And I do want to clarify on something on that, because when you had me on the phone and I was listening, when I heard him say that he had called the Indiana Election Division, and I didn't hear if he said what he said after that, because I had called the Indiana Election Division, and I was told by the co-directors and their attorneys that because she was not of the same precinct that he was, that challenge was null and void. So I immediately called you right away, and so I don't know who he talked to, if he supposedly talked to somebody. Called you right away, and that's when Ben was told that he was able to vote.
Okay.
I just feel the first phone call should have been made to us, Perry County Election Board, not to a party chair. I don't care what party. That first phone call should have been made to us. That's our job.
And that's what we stress when we train the workers. If there's any problem in the precinct, that they should call the courthouse first, not whoever. And I don't know where he got his authority to call when he should have called the clerk.
So now that talks about, do we think it was an intentional? Now I want to talk about if we feel he was threatened. I'm going to say yes, because when I'm reading his complaint, no person should have been standing in the middle of the room not knowing what was going on for approximately 10 minutes. 7 or 8 minutes, sorry. That's going to make any person intimidated, embarrassed. I would feel the exact same way. So my answer to that part of the IC code is yes, I feel he was threatened as well. And not to mention when he specifically told her that he did not feel safe in her presence.
There will probably be questions in some people's minds regarding phone calls. When the inspector called me, we were in the process of visiting all the polling stations. I had called the courthouse, said the inspector called, there's an incident, and I asked Becca at the time, do research, find out everything you can about this form, and we went right straight to the depot. When we arrived at the depot, Rachel had called me back. So I had my phone, and she was on my phone the whole time speaking outside, and then when we went inside. And it was when
11 minutes and 59 seconds.
When she heard the commotion, the accusations, the things going, this is when she told one of the girls in the office to call the police, because things were getting a little out of hand. There was a lot of yelling and hollering. But as far as Mr. DeHart, I think he was, and it was because you are related to a strong Democratic person. And that's what, and he was targeted for, because her accusation was he was a Democrat voting on a Republican ballot. So I have to agree that I think it was intentional, and that it was knowingly, and that she was intimidating and threatening to Mr. DeHart. If this is the consensus of the three of the election board, then this is what is stand. And all this paperwork has, I will let you know, has already been sent to the Secretary of State. And I believe it's already been sent to the Department of Justice. We will further send all this paperwork on to the proper authorities, which they will deal with. Now, there was one other thing he asked in his report, and that I think we do need to take action on. And he asked for a ban on Mrs. Flynn from ever participating in or having any working capacity in regard to Perry County elections governed by this board. For this, is there?
I will make a motion that Sherry Flynn can no longer be a poll worker in any precinct in Perry County.
I second.
And who was second? And all agreed, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign? Okay, all right. We will conclude this meeting. Thank you for attending. Thank you for being respectful, quiet, putting up with our inexperience up here and our trembling nerves. Okay, and for those that think we are inexperienced, let me say, I'd like to see you do better. Okay, thank you very much. I'll make a motion to adjourn this meeting. Is there a second?
I second.
Rachel seconds. Thank you.
Great job, guys.
Proper spelling of names of everybody who